Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to Ali's World of Finance. In this quick video, we're going to talk about Ford stock, ticker symbol F. And I had a subscriber that actually mentioned that they wanted a video like this. So if you guys ever have a stock that you want me to talk about, make sure you leave a comment and I'll be sure to make that video. And if you're new, please subscribe because I do videos like this all the time. So let's go ahead and talk about Ford stock and let's see where they're at, how they're doing, and what the future looks like. So let's start by looking at just a couple of their numbers here. I got these from Robinhood. So their market cap is at $45.01 billion. Their 52-week low was at $10.67, and their 52-week high was at $13.98. And currently, at the time of recording this video, they were at $11.05. Okay, so let's take a look at their business. So their business model is based around designing, manufacturing, marketing, and servicing a full line of Ford cars, trucks, SUVs, as well as Lincoln luxury vehicles. And they're really looking to expand their business model with emerging opportunities with investments in electrification, autonomy, and mobility, which is great because that's really where the automobile industry and market is headed. So they really need to deliver on that. And they also have financial services through Ford Credit. Now, let's take a look at some of their numbers from NASDAQ.com. Their last 4 quarters, quarter 2 EPS in 2016, they didn't meet analyst expectations. They actually were under expectations by 13%. In quarter 3, they exceeded expectations by 23%. Quarter 4, we're down 6% from expectations. And then the last quarter, quarter 1, 2017, they exceeded analyst expectations by 14%. So the last 3 quarters, I would say, were pretty good, considering that they also had some recalls, which I'll mention in a second. But so their number is not too bad overall. Now let's look at their PE ratios. In 2016, their actual PE ratio was at 6.31. In 2017, it's estimated at 7.03. And 2018 estimated at 6.73, so a little bit lower than the previous year. Now, the thing to look at here is that their competition, the automobile industry, the average PE ratio for 2017 is estimated at 4.20. So you can see that Ford has a much higher PE ratio than the rest of the market. Obviously, that doesn't apply with like Tesla because Tesla doesn't even make profit, but so I don't even know what their PE ratio is, but that's something to consider. Are they more of a value stock, or are they more of a growth stock because their PE ratio is a bit high? And when we look at the consensus price target on NASDAQ.com, it's at $14. Okay, so again, is it a value stock? Because it's a little lower, it could still get more. Is it a growth stock? Not too sure, but we'll talk a little more about that. Now, recently they've had a CEO change where they replaced Mark Fields with Jim Hackett. And this change, a lot of analysts are saying that this change demonstrates a shift that they're trying to make from being an old industrial company to a company that can compete with Silicon Valley. So a company that will focus more on these type of things, electrification, autonomy, and mobility. And the reason is because Jim Hackett was actually the one in charge of their autonomy and mobility unit. So that's really the company trying to show investors that they're really focused on making this change here and focusing more on autonomy and mobility and things like that. Now, change can obviously be a very good thing because you would have change so that you can have future improvements, right? That's why you make changes, so that you can have future improvements. However, change also takes time. And time is something that Ford doesn't really have on its side because a lot of their competition are really ahead of them in all of these areas. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So we really need these future improvements. We need them right now, to be honest. So let's look at their positives and their negatives. Now, them taking action and making a CEO change, and they've also made a lot of other upper position changes, a lot of other managerial changes. It shows that they're really trying to make positive changes, okay? So I look at that as a little bit of a positive. Now, their numbers are actually not that bad despite having some recalls. So I also think that that's a little bit of a positive. They're actually not doing too horrible, but we'll look a little bit closer at it because in the end, their sales are declining a little bit. So we'll look a little bit more at that. Now, they are also cutting costs, and one way that they're cutting costs is that they're cutting 10% of the global workforce, which is a horrible thing for workers, obviously, but it can help the stock because in the end, that's more money for the company. So it can end up helping the stock. And even though sales have been declining in the US, which we're going to talk about in the negatives, they have been increasing in Europe. So their European market is growing, and they're increasing their market share in Europe. So very good stuff coming from Europe. And if you're a dividend investor, then this may be a stock to look at because they have been paying dividends for the last few years, increasing a little bit as well. And they're only paying 40% of their earnings, which means that they will probably sustain the dividends that they're paying now or increase it. Okay, so if you're a dividend investor, it's not a bad stock to look at. Now, you have to wonder, is this a value or a growth stock, which I kind of mentioned earlier? And you can see some stuff here that may mean that it's a value stock, because in the past year, the stock has been down almost 12%, and the stock has been going down a lot. So you may get a value here if you're picking up on a little bit of a dip, and then it starts to go back up again. So you really have to think about that. But their PE ratio is pretty high, so maybe more of a growth stock, not too sure. Now, Ford Trucks is another positive to look at, because in the last 40 years, their F-Series trucks has actually been the highest selling trucks in America, okay? Which I thought was crazy in the last 40 years. So their truck sales are still doing great, and they'll probably continue to do great. And you have to wonder, how much can electrification and those type of areas, how much can that compete with trucks? Because usually trucks need a lot of power and stuff like that, but it's just something to look at anyway. Now, negatives. Okay, so they made this change to Jim Hackett. Now, I listed it in the positive, I'll list it here in the negative as well, because a lot of analysts actually think that this is more of a gimmick, where the board is really just choosing a CEO who they can kind of play off as somebody who's going to bring these changes. But a lot of analysts are saying that he doesn't really even have that much experience. And I don't want to say like I don't know, I don't want to say like bad words or whatever, but like a lot of people are saying that he's kind of a dumb guy. So I don't know too much about him, but I'd have to research him a little bit more to really see how experienced he is and things like that. But some analysts have been very negative on him, and some have been very positive. So it's kind of a mixed bag there. Now, in terms of innovation, Ford is really behind almost all of their competition. In fact, their Ford Fusion, their electric series, their sales are actually less than most of their competition. They're behind Tesla, they're behind Toyota. Toyota obviously has a lot of progress there with the Prius. They're behind the Nissan Leaf. I think there was one from Chrysler that they're also behind. So they're not doing too good in this area. So they really need to make these future improvements. They need to start making them now. However, that could be more market for them to take in the future. There's different ways you could look at it, but so far they're not doing too great. So they really need to ramp up this stuff and get improving. So their stock sentiment is also not too good. Their stock has obviously been hammered lately, and it's been going down a lot. So you have to wonder, a lot of investors aren't too happy with Ford, and they don't really think that things are going to change because they've been selling a lot. Now, in the last 4 months, US auto sales have been declining, which is also another bad sign here. So are we having kind of a bad trend here? Is this something that you may not want to get involved with? And Ford has actually declined in sales, in vehicle sales by 7.1%, so pretty significant there. Now, despite Ford declining in sales and Ford not doing too good, the board of directors actually increased their salary from $250,000 to $315,000. So even though Ford has been doing poorly, the board of directors have actually increased their salary. And a lot of people are angry about this because they're thinking that the board is really only looking out for themselves, increasing their salary even though the company isn't performing well. So overall, how do I feel about Ford? If I had to give like a sell, hold, or buy rating, I'd probably be leaning a little bit more towards hold, and that's where a lot of analysts are as well. Now, it could be a buy. They could deliver on these things. The CEO change could be a positive thing. They could start delivering. There could be a lot of market share that they don't have that they could gain. So of course, there's a lot of ways that they could improve. And their PE ratio is high. So, are they going to have that growth and things like that? It's a lot of things to consider. But I don't really like the automobile industry for a couple reasons. I'm pretty scared of Tesla, and I'm also scared of Toyota Prius. I mean, it seems like everywhere I go, I see a Prius. So Tesla, Toyota, they have some heavy competition there, and that's really the future that we're kind of looking at here. So I don't know. I'm not too excited about Ford, but I could see why some people would try to buy it. Maybe it's a little bit of a value. Maybe you're a dividend investor. Maybe it's on a dip. Maybe it'll start to come back up. Not too sure. But I will be looking at the next earnings call, and I want to hear Jim Hackett speak. I want to listen to the whole earnings call. I'm very interested in it now. And I want to hear Jim Hackett speak. I want to see how he addresses these things and what their future looks like. And I want to hear other people in their company as well. And I want to just hear what their future looks like. It should be very interesting, and I'll make a follow-up video when that happens. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you're new, please subscribe. I do videos like this all the time, and I hope that you all have a wonderful, beautiful day. Take care.